I want to welcome everyone for joining the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Small Scale Irrigation. This is our semi-annual research meeting. The presentation you're about to see is based on research conducted with the support of USAID and in Mali from the Bureau for Humanitarian Affairs. This presentation is by Rosaine Yegbemey from the World Vegetable Center, and he will be presenting on vegetable seed research supported by the Bureau for Humanitarian Affairs in Mali and West Africa. And I will hand over to our first presenter.
Great, thank you very much, Nicole, and hi everyone. Welcome to this presentation. My name is Rosaine Yegbemey. I'm agricultural economist at World Veg. I'm based in Cotonou. And I will be talking about a study on the seed sector we conducted in Mali within the framework of the Innovation Lab for Small Scale Irrigation. The study itself has been led by a couple of colleagues of mine, including Siaka Dembele, Jean-Baptiste Tinegre, Germain Diarra. They are all based in Mali. And another co-author is Pepin. He is the head of the flagship Enabling Impact at World Veg. So the study, at least the presentation is entitled Development of a Vegetable Seed Sector in Mali and Opportunities for Irrigated Seed Production. At the end of this presentation, what I would like you guys to take away is that vegetables are highly profitable crops. And most importantly, vegetable seed production offers greater opportunity to invest in irrigation. We also argue that irrigation systems, or we show that irrigation systems that are currently used by vegetable seed producers in Mali are mostly traditional and rely on human labor and power. And improved irrigation system can rationalize the use of water to limit its losses and reduce seed production costs. And finally, we argue that there are good prospects to promote irrigated vegetable seed production, but the way forward needs to be clear. In Mali, like in most of the developing countries, at least in West Africa, agriculture is a very important activity. It's a key economic sector. It contributes to employment. About 60–80% of the labor force are involved in agriculture. It also contributes to a large share to the GDP, around between 30–35%. Agriculture in Mali is also dominated by smallholder farmers, and there are many constraints, and one of the important constraints is the credit constraints. And because of the credit constraints, for most farmers, it's simply not affordable for them to forego present earnings, and in order to invest in assets such as training or irrigation, assets that could offer them better opportunities, better productivity or income in the future. And we all know that investments, even in small-scale irrigation, is expensive for many farmers, not only in Mali, but in most of the developing countries. But here we have vegetables that do offer greater opportunity to invest in irrigation. They are highly profitable crops, and seed producers talking about investing in small-scale irrigation can definitely lead the way. Vegetables in Mali, the vegetable sector is growing very rapidly over the last decades. Vegetables can be cultivated in both raining and dry season, and on this under irrigation by small-scale farmers and across the country. We know that in Mali, the informal seed sector, I mean the seeds saved by farmers for own use and local exchange, is the main source of seeds for most vegetables, particularly for traditional vegetables. In Mali still, only a small amount of vegetable seeds are produced by the formal sector locally. So most of the seed demand has been largely met with the imported seed. So in this context and against this background, the main objective of our study was to assess the development potential of a strong vegetable seed sector in Mali, and also to identify challenges as well as entry points to strengthen the sector. And here we focus on the potential of irrigation for the development of the local vegetable seed production in Mali. In terms of methodology, we mostly look at the formal vegetable seed sector, but we also acknowledge that the informal or the semi-formal sector is quite important in Mali. We started with a stakeholder mapping that was used to select the key informants that are involved in the vegetable seed production in the major production areas, and then the study zone covers Koulikoro, Sikasso, Ségou, and the district of Bamako and the regions of KS and Mopti. We started with a rapid literature review, and then we also conducted over 70 interviews with government officers, seed companies, seed cooperatives, individual seed producers, agro dealers, but also seed distributors. Our key area of investigations are first, the situational analysis of the vegetable seed sector in Mali. We also look into the potential of irrigation to enhance vegetable seed supply. And we also look into the interventions to strengthen the vegetable seed sector. In terms of results, we confirm, or at least our investigations confirm, that the vegetable seed sector in Mali has been growing very rapidly over the last decade. The main production areas are, of course, Sikasso, Ségou, KS, Koulikoro, and Bamako. And vegetables are of a high economic importance. The most important ones are okra, shallot, tomato, chili pepper, onion, lettuce, squash, eggplant, cucumber, and cabbage. But we also confirm through our situational analysis that only small quantities of vegetable seeds are locally produced in Mali by the formal seed sector. There have been some progress in terms of organizing individual seed producers into cooperative and association, but still there are some key constraints that need to be addressed. First, low technical capacity of the cooperative or the seed producers, low performance of local varieties, limited access to finance, lack of seed processing and packaging equipment, lack of irrigation technologies that often limit seed production to the wet season. It's also important to note that in addition to those constraints, locally produced seeds are not very attractive as imported seeds. And this is mostly because of the regulatory requirements that make it more difficult and costly to commercialize a locally developed vegetable variety than to sell on imported varieties. Imported seeds also required phytosanitary certificates and germination tests, but that doesn't require variety registration, while local seed that does require that. In terms of potential of irrigation to enhance vegetable seed supply in Mali, we see that there are some opportunities. We have favorable agroecological conditions in terms of land or water. We have the presence of both surface and groundwater. There is a high price of vegetable seeds, the predominance of the traditional irrigation systems that rely only on labor. So there is a demand for improved irrigation systems, and the availability of labor is there, but we need to rationalize the use of water so that at the end of the day, we limit its losses and also reduce seed production costs. Right now, irrigation methods or systems that seed producers are currently used in Mali depends on the available water source, whether it's a nature like rainfall, it's a depth, or how abundant is the water. Depends also on the field conditions, the production period, the material and financial resources that the farmers they have, and the availability of labor. In terms of irrigation methods or systems, the current or the most common systems used by seed producers are the manual or traditional systems that uses human labor to carry water from shallow wells to the fields. We also see surface or gravity irrigation used in fields alongside rivers at the level of water reservoirs in lowlands. Less common irrigation systems used by vegetable seed producers are drip irrigation. This is not that common, but is expanding due to the abundance of groundwater. And also we have the sprinklers irrigation system that was not at all mentioned by seed producers. We also come up with a list of interventions that we can most probably consider to strengthen the vegetable seed sector in Mali. The first is the need to advocate and to prioritize the attention that needs to be given to vegetable seed sector by the government or in the government policies. Seed laws and regulations need to be revisited to take into account the specific nature of vegetables. We also have requirements related to the variety registration, seed certification, and basic seed production may need to be eased for vegetables to make local seed production more competitive and attractive. There is also an important need to strengthen the technical capacity of the local seed producers, and to facilitate access to seed processing and packaging equipment, storage, but also improve irrigation equipment and finance. We also need to invest in local vegetable breeding research to increase farmers' choice of locally adapted varieties. In terms of research perspective, when we look at the results so far, we plan to finalize and publish a seed assessment reports. We also plan to conduct a follow-up data collection on both the demand and supply sides of irrigated seed production. And at the end of the day, we hope to develop an action research project based on the learning. So in terms of follow-up data collection, as I said, we'll be looking at irrigation demand side. So we'll be working with vegetable seed producers, so farmers or cooperatives, to look at the knowledge, attitude, practice, perception and expectations in relation with irrigated seed production. And we will also likely explore their willingness to pay or adopt improved irrigation techniques for vegetable seed production. We will likely focus on drip irrigation and also sprinkler. From the supply side, we plan to work to engage with irrigation supply companies to do an irrigation assessment, but the assessment will be done by the companies themselves. So we understand that they have the approach, the methodology, and we hope that the assessment will shed light on what are the promising irrigation techniques that can be used in Mali, when they can be used, for which vegetables they can be used, where, how, and more information on the way forward to promote irrigated vegetable seed production in Mali. So this is a brief overview of the study we conducted. Thank you very much for your attention and your questions.
Thank you, Rosaine, very much for your presentation. I would like to invite questions from our listeners. I do have a question myself, so I can go ahead and get us started on this. One of your points was to say that there was low performance of local varieties, and I was wondering what is meant by low performance. And the local varieties, I'm assuming, are certain types of vegetables. So If you could give us a little bit more information about what those local varieties are and what is meant by low performance.
Yes, thank you very much, Nicole. I will try to answer, and I hope Pepin also will jump in at some point. So local varieties are varieties that are basically not imported. So they are kind of very specific to Mali or to the local context. And in terms of performance, we are talking about yield, for instance. And this, you know, there's the local varieties are basically disseminated through the informal sector. So I cultivate this year, then I save some of my harvest that I will use as seeds the next year, or I will exchange with farmers. So the power of the varieties at some point is not as good as you can expect to get an optimal yield. So there is a need to work more, to do more breeding research, to develop, I think F1 they call it, so that the power of the variety itself is maintained and the productivity is quite optimal. But I will maybe check with Pepin whether he has any.
Yeah, problem with locally produced seed is often it's not well packaged, and the production methods are not controlled. So sometimes there will high variation in the performance of a variety. So sometimes it performs quite well, but often also it doesn't perform well or doesn't even germinate. So this uncertainty creates a huge loss for the farmers, because sometimes they plant and they don't get the returns. So that's why seed quality, improving seed quality is important. It's not always needed that we do hybrids. I think also you can have open pollinated varieties of a good quality. So we're not necessarily, I think, promoting hybrid production. But yeah, in general, quality seed, that's what we aim for. Yeah.
And are those local vegetables as in like a indigenous or local crop, or you're talking in terms of local varieties of crops that may have been brought from other places?
Both, because in Mali, for the global vegetables that Rosaine showed on his slide, with exception probably as okra, most of those are imported varieties, and they're often F1 hybrids. But of course, there's many like locally traditional vegetables in Mali that are not imported, and they rely only on locally produced seed. We're not so sure what to focus on, because those imported varieties of the global vegetables, the price of those seeds are very high. So for many seed companies, they naturally want to get into that business because the profits seem to be high in those commercial crops. But we do actually also want to promote the traditional African vegetables, because especially for nutrition, it's so important that people eat those leafy vegetables and not just eat cucumber and tomato.
Thanks for the response to that. Are there other questions related to the potential for irrigated seed production in Mali? Any comments on planned research that's coming up?
Yeah, we would be particularly interested in some feedback on that demand side and supply side thinking, whether that's a good idea to do, for example, a irrigation assessment by private companies. Is that the usual way to do it? Because we're not familiar with that. Yeah.
I know we have a number of modelers that are listening to the conversation. I was wondering if Srini, anyone from your team, had a comment as well.
I mean, not a comment, but I was just wondering how we talked about some of the irrigation, the know-how, meaning actually how technologically either the farmer or the supplier side are knowledgeable about implementing sprinkler or drip irrigation, because this all requires a little bit of technical background to do the design and implementation, and also the cost. How does the cost affects in our production cost affects in this implementing or adapting irrigation technologies?
Thank you, Srinivasan. That's exactly what we want to find out through the follow-up. What we've done is a bit general, and we hope to see whether they are already knowledgeable, whether they know such kind of improved irrigation techniques, systems, and if they know whether they use it, or if they don't use it, why they don't use it. Maybe it's because of the cost, because the maintenance cost, or even the initial investment cost. And in case they are willing to use, how much they could be willing to pay. And from the supply side, at the same time, we hope also to be working with companies that supply irrigation systems to see how they see like improve irrigation systems being introduced and developed and adopted by vegetable seed producers in Mali. So these are questions, research questions we hope to investigate as we go along.
We have a question from Elizabeth Bryan from IFPRI.
Yeah, thanks. I also had a question about the irrigation supply side work that you'll be doing. Are you going to be doing field experiments with different irrigation techniques or technologies for particular crops? Just curious about how that will work and how you'll look at the effects of different methods and techniques.
Yes, I think Pepin will also be able to speak to the question, but what we have in mind is first to start with an assessment. So for specific and let's say promising irrigation systems. So the suppliers will do that, and if they can generate information like cost benefit analysis, that will be very interesting. But at the end of the day, we hope to put together for maybe next year or the coming year an experimental, like something actual, where we maybe support a couple of farmers to install some specific irrigation systems, and then we will collect data and see from a farmer, like in the field, in real world, how the system perform, how, let's say, how cost effective are specific systems. So right now, this is what we have in mind, but for this year, the suppliers themselves will be doing the assessment, and we hope they will be also able to highlight the cost benefits of the different systems we will be looking at.
Thanks. We have a question from Melkamu Derse from ILRI.
Thank you, Nicole, and the presenter. My question is on the variety registration. In your presentation, I heard you saying for imported vegetable seeds, there is no variety registration requirements. The only thing required is phytosanitary certificate and germination test. But later on, you said the registration process needs to be eased. Is it for local varieties? Is it different for locals or imported ones? I was a bit not sure about it.
Yes, Melkamu, thank you for your question. Yes, this is for local varieties. So for when you import, you just need to check and then to do the germination test. But if it's a local varieties, you have to register this, and the registration process is not, at least now, is not very easy at all. And also compare, more or less, the country is using the same registration protocol in place for cereals, and that doesn't really apply to vegetables. So the thinking is to see how to adopt this and to make it more easier for the sector to evolve as we go along.
Thank you. Jean-Claude from Texas A&M.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Rosaine, for the presentation. I was just curious to know if you, in your preliminary situational analysis, you looked at the whole value chain, at least to have an idea, apart from the seed production, but how about the vegetable production, and how about the demand and consumption of vegetable in general? So who will be the segment of the population of business that will be buying the vegetable in case the production increase? Thank you.
Thank you, Jean-Claude. Yes, we do look at this in the report itself. And in terms of consumption, for instance, the market is definitely there. We know that the consumption is still very far below what the WHO recommends. So the market is there. And there have been some initiatives to promote, of course, food security, but also nutritional security. So the demand, at least from the consumer side, is there, and production needs to be increased to meet that demand.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a final question. I was interested in if there is any information about how COVID-19 may have affected the ability to access imported seed, or it could also be in the cases where there's been security issues in Mali, if there's any disruption to the seed supply because of the heavy reliance on imported seed.
Yeah, I understand that is not a major thing. Actually, the major thing for Mali is the variation in the currency exchange rate, and that's the problem with imported seed. It often has to be paid in dollars. So if the exchange rate changes, the seed price can dramatically increase or lower. So that creates a lot of uncertainty on the side of the farmers. I think that's more important than the effect of COVID or insecurity at the moment.
Okay, understood. Very interesting. Well, thank you very much for the presentation. We've learned a lot more about what the potential is, and we're looking forward to the next stages in the research. I know that through our soon to be added private sector partner for the Innovation Lab, that we will be working with a private irrigation equipment supplier to look at some of the other issues, as well as working with some seed cooperatives. So we're looking forward to that step in our research. So thank you very much for your presentation today.